Okay, let's start with the stretch stitch on the Bernina 5 series. Now I have selected stitch 11, which is the stretch stitch. I've also reduced the pressure of my presser foot. When you're sewing a knit, this is a very fine knit that I have here. I've reduced it from 70 to 50. Also, I have a ballpoint needle in my machine, and I am threaded with polyester thread. The one other thing that I did add is I put on my single stitch plate. If you find that your stitching is going down into the hole when you're stitching, so here's the standard stitch plate. Sometimes you may find that your fabric gets caught into here. Change to the straight stitch plate. The caveat with that is that you must be sewing in a straight line. Now, this stretch stitch does work with a single stitch plate. You want to use your flywheel at the beginning to make sure that you have no issues. So I've moved my fabric over, and I'm just going to do a seam allowance. That's at the edge of the foot. Now you would never use the single stitch throat plate on a zigzag. Anything that has a width. Now there are many other ways on the 5 series to stitch knit fabrics. As you can see, it's a very, very fine zigzag. But it also allows you to stretch. That's the key. One of the things that you can do with knits is use your dual feed. So let's talk about the difference between a dual feed and a walking foot number 50. So the dual feed on this machine works after the stitch is made. So it moves the top and the bottom layers after the stitch has been made. As you can see that I just engaged the dual feed, and it's a foot that works after the stitch is made. So if you were using this for quilting, what would happen is that the top and the bottom layers of your quilt sandwich would move, but the batting will not. A walking foot moves all 3 layers at the same time. So, using a dual feed for piecing is wonderful because you have your 2 layers, your top and your bottom. If you've ever been stitching and you have your top layer of fabric slightly longer than the underneath fabric, that's because the feed dogs of a machine move the fabric. You want to engage your dual feed so it moves both of them at the same time. Again, if you're using this foot to quilt a quilt, so you have your 3 layers, your top layer, your batting, and your backing, it will only move the top layer and the backing, not the batting. You may get some stretching in your batting or some bunching. Using 2 layers, use your dual feed. If you have 3 layers or more, use your walking foot.